good there? Okay. Welcome to our last class. Yeah, I know. It's been really fun relearning homeopathy with all of you, and I hope that everyone is able to take from this class not only a foundational understanding of this complete science, medicine, art, but also a real practical knowledge of a way that you were able to help yourselves, help your family members, help people in your lives with finding optimal health. That's really what this is all about. Is there's a lot of different tools out there, and the tools that we have to offer at our clinic are very different than what most people in the world are exposed to. And so to share something like homeopathy with you all and actually get a, kind of working knowledge of it is pretty cool to achieve in a 6-week course. As we move forward, as we've talked about in the past, there's going to be more opportunity to learn, and through our clinic there's a lot of opportunity to kind of dive into a more complete, in-depth understanding of homeopathy. I'm going to do a really shotgun attempt today of explaining more in depth how really comprehensive the system is and how diverse homeopathy can be used in the treatment of ailments. So we can kind of use that as a jumping off point for future discussions. Today, there's a few major things I want to hit on. One is a set of new remedies. We're going to cover 4 new remedies today. Those are our last 4 out of our 35 remedy kit. And the conditions that are going to be main topics of conversation are headache, fever, and influenza. So we'll go through those conditions and talk about their manifestations and treatment, and discuss the associated remedies. I probably won't be going back too heavily into prior taught remedies, only because with these conditions, fever, influenza, headache, there are a lot of remedies that can have these as chief complaints. So again, it's always going to be the characterizing symptoms that help us find that right remedy. For the rest of the class, what I would like to do is, first of all, leave space for questions, lingering topics or ways to tie things together, or things about the practice and practicality of using homeopathy that we aren't crystal clear on in terms of how you can take this tool away from this class. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about kind of the use of homeopathy in chronic disease, and really how the larger picture of health and disease fits into the model of homeopathic practice. We kind of hit it really hard that first week talking about the principles of homeopathy. We didn't really talk about the practice of homeopathy as much there, but now we've been honing in these last 5 or 4 weeks on the remedies and the pictures of these remedies and how they relate to acute illness. But in reality, our health is much greater than just these acute ailments that come up occasionally. There's a lot of chronic disease in our world, and so I will attempt to speak to the way in which homeopathy can be an approach to treating chronic disease and how we begin to go about that. So I'll try to kind of conclude things on that note. Now, a few people have missed some classes, and hopefully everyone has been able to view the videos well and easily to kind of get caught up. I will, at the end of the class, I think what I'm going to do is put all of those links together into one email and send them out to all of the participants in the class, because I know it's pretty dense, the material we've been covering, and it's the evening when we get together, and it may be very helpful for some of you to kind of hear this information over again. So I will send that link out. It may take a little while for me to pull it together. I'd like to say I could get it out next week, but if not, it will certainly be the following week. So we can kind of, you know, use that as something to lock all of this in place. I'm going to pause there and ask about questions just from what I just spoke about, logistics of all that. Anybody have any? Okay. Then I guess before I dive into this week's topic, what thoughts or, you know, kind of unresolved questions have occurred to you over the last few weeks that we want to set aside some time for tonight?
I don't have any unresolved, but I had a couple of times when I got to use my kit.
Cool.
It was very exciting.
A share, okay.
Yes, so both my kids were sick with colds, and so I had to go through my little question and answers, which is a little harder with kids. They just kind of stare blankly at you, so you kind of have to prod a little bit. But the remedy that I used for my daughter did not work with my son, so we had to redo it with him, and then it worked for him.
Okay.
So that was fun, and my daughter's extremely picky. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't hardly get her to take any kind of medication ever, and she just popped those in her mouth. It didn't bother her. Oh, does it taste? She was so excited about that. Yeah. And so it was, and my son was like, can I have more? So it worked out really good. And then I also, last night, I think it was, my puppy got really bad diarrhea, just out of the blue. And so I was able to use a remedy on him, stopped it instantly.
Cool.
So I was like, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. So.
Yeah.
No questions, just lots of excitement.
That's great. I appreciate the actual experiences because it's just, you know, reinforcing that you don't need to be an expert to use this in this context, and it can just make a huge difference.
And it was wonderful that, you know, both of them the kids took a remedy, and they didn't get sick if I gave them another one.
Right.
I mean, you could just keep trying on them.
Yeah,
So-
that's right. Yeah, I
so
mean,
that was, yeah.
there's very little potential to create harm because of the way in which the substance is prepared.
And
So.
they were like, oh, are you sure? You know, because they're so used to conventional medicine and,
Yeah.
you know, that they could die from too much whatever, have stomach problems. And so, are you sure? I'm like, oh yeah, this is the wonder. You could eat this whole vial. And you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And,
They do.
yeah, and Dawson was like, oh.
Yeah.
So, but we went
Yeah.
over that, how expensive it was and how he can't, but.
Yeah, right.
No,
Yeah.
there was no worries, and that's the greatest part about it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and just that dosing piece, you know, you'll actually buy in the stores those oscillococcinum or something, and the directions on the back say take the entire tube. It's just, you know, a money ploy, because if you take the entire tube, you have to buy another one. So just one little granule is all you need, literally, to stimulate the homeopathic response.
Well, they wanted more in 4 hours, because they're so used to how we do things. And I'm like, okay, you can go ahead, you know, let's just, you know, kind of wean ourselves off of how things used to be.
Right.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it was interesting.
Cool. Thank you.
So on that note,
Yeah.
in the first class, we talked about how, or the second class, I'm losing a train of thought already. How conventional medicine can anecdote this stuff, but
Yeah.
it may not actually work. Can you speak a little bit more about that, and also, can a homeopathic upset a conventional medicine?
Yeah. Good question. Great question.
And
So.
I'm just, because you know my situation, I'm thinking more about my mom right now,
Yeah.
and how I can help her in this process, but she's got some pretty serious stuff going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's, you know, multi-level question, but I will attempt to kind of navigate that. So we have this sheet, it's on page, well, it's not labeled, it's in your first section where I talked about antidoting factors, interfering or antidoting, and so I list a lot of things, and when I did my first lecture, I kind of focused on, you know, essential oils, really strong chemicals, incredibly strong, stressful event, but I also said prescription medications. And so yeah, when I treat patients with homeopathy, I do pay attention to drugs. I kind of, not all drugs are equal. Like a blood pressure medication is going to be a very different story than, say, a high-dose antidepressant or high-dose steroids. The level of physiological intervention that's happening with the drug makes a difference, I think. So, you know, to answer that, it is a case-by-case basis, but generally, if the drug is exerting a very strong influence on the individual, that it alters function pretty significantly, just like a recreational drug could do again, like THC, marijuana. I consider that a pretty strong antidoting factor in a lot of people. Part of it's individual, it's about individual susceptibility. If that individual is really susceptible to that drug, it can really throw the remedy off if you're using it. So I say with really neuroleptic drugs like antidepressants, anti-seizure meds, really kind of strong medications in that regard, or things like, high doses of steroids or high doses of opiates, pretty strong medicines. I will often choose to use a low potency of a remedy and repeat it often. So basically, if you're treating, an acute illness, you're probably not taking that drug all the time to interfere with it. But if you do take a dose of that drug and the symptoms or the improvement seems to plateau or halt, you would simply need to repeat the remedy after. So it's not like the homeopathic effect is ruined, you just need to go back to the remedy. So patients that I'm treating for more chronic illnesses who are habitual THC users or, on an antidepressant, I may give them a daily dose of a remedy. So even if they're antidoting it, they are still having the remedy have action repeatedly. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis. At the same time, the way I get around it most of the time is using daily repetition. That's in the setting of a chronic disease.
But it won't work really the other way. Giving someone a homeopathic, it's not going to upset.
Yeah, the second part of your question, no. There's, of course a medical doctor may say, well, I don't want anything else doing anything, but in reality, there's no danger for a homeopathic remedy to interfere with a conventional drug. Because they're totally different, right? A conventional drug is mostly about suppression with super powerful physiological forces going on. A homeopathic is resonating with the energetic signature of a way in which the organism is disturbed. And it's trying to, find that common wavelength to neutralize that disturbance. So if it doesn't match up with the wavelength of the disease process, it's just not going to do anything. It's not going to disrupt what another drug is doing.
And if it gives the wrong remedy, it won't do anything.
Yeah, basically.
Great.
Yeah.
The hardest obstacle is the suppression that the medical community puts on giving anything else but what they say should be used.
Correct.
And the patient often says, oh, my doctor says I can't take anything else. So it's just really hard to get over that obstacle.
It is, yeah. And some of our patients have learned over time and experience that they don't, it's ultimately their choice, it's their body. I say that a lot to patients. I don't ever want to make a decision for a patient. It's my job, my duty as a physician to offer options and give information in order to help a person better decide what they want to do with their health, rather than preside over them and make decisions for them. So, that's an important thing to remember, and it takes a while to relearn that power dynamic of, no, I make the decisions of what happens to my body, not another person. So, yeah.
And a testimonial, when you talked about anti-seizure medication, our daughter was on seizure medication all of her life, but we used homeopathics, and they worked beautifully on her, just fabulous.
Yeah, yep, and that's the other thing is that, it may be, Monica's question about interference, that someone is not really susceptible to those drugs. It doesn't disturb their vital force too much, in which case it might not affect the remedy at all. But to be safe, I do like to repeat, with those heavy drugs. So, yeah, great.
So back home, there's a real huge problem with opiates,
Yeah.
heroin, and the methamphetamines.
Yeah.
So, and I was watching a thing on the news past few days about big problem back east and all, what they're trying to do. So my question is there a homeopathic remedy, like for somebody that's trying to stop the use of heroin, trying to stop their use of heroin, like there's some kind of prescription pill they can take now every day so that they don't have the withdrawal effects and keeps
Yeah.
them from taking the drug. And then methamphetamine, is there a homeopathic something that they can take that will help?
Certainly homeopathy could be a great tool there, one of the best tools. The difficulty of it is that everyone's going to have a different set of withdrawal symptoms, right? For one person, it might be profound weakness and chills, and another person, it may be severe fear and tremors. Another person might have profound diarrhea, right? So it depends on how the person presents the symptom of withdrawal. Not everyone's going to be the same, and that's what guides us to the remedy. So there are, by nature of those drugs and the withdrawal symptoms, there are by nature going to be more prevalent remedies, right? There's going to be maybe a handful of remedies that are going to fit the picture of, 9/10 of the people coming off of the opiates. And that other 10th might have another very small, strange remedy that's the one they need. So you can find groups of remedies, but one remedy overarching that's going to work for most people is probably quite unlikely. So you have to take the case. You have to learn, okay, tell me emotionally what you're experiencing. Tell me about the physical symptoms, what makes it better and worse. And that is all going to play into the decision on which remedy to use.
Okay, because it seems like with methamphetamine, now I don't know if the answer is because there's so many people that have committed suicide after they've quit
Right.
methamphetamine because they just got sick and tired of dealing with it every day, trying to use it, wanting to use it, wanting
Yeah.
to use it. And,
Yeah.
for long, and one guy was 1 year, he said, my anniversary is 1 year, and the next day he shot himself and killed
Yeah.
himself. And stuff like that, I mean, is that just because, I can't make up my mind if it's just because that's what the others have done, or if that's how strong that drug is to get away from.
Yeah.
And with homeopathically, they could be treated or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a multitude of interventions that can be engaged. I mean, our drug recovery system in our country, I think everyone will agree, is pretty broken and pretty poor. The resources out there are very limited. So in reality, it's like, well, what created the habit in the first place, the need for the person to go and use? Well, there was probably part of their biography, part of their life story in which they suffered great harm, and on an emotional level, on a physical level, that created a need to cope somehow, and that was what was generated. So to get back to healing that original suffering is what, and allowing the person to move beyond it is what really needs to happen. But there needs to be an incredible amount of structure and support in that. And homeopathy can be a big tool there in helping someone kind of dissolve that pattern that created the cycle they're in. But other tools are often really important too. So it's so individualized that it's really hard to say this is the way to solve it. Yeah, but it's a pretty tough thing that is going on, and ultimately there's just not enough resources out there to help these people. What else? Other questions anyone has? Okay.
The fear thing, just we have a grandson that's taking his pre-medical exam tomorrow. And he doesn't test well, and his mother has used homeopathics with him a lot.
Yeah.
So, there's just, I keep
Yeah.
thinking, what could I?
Yeah, there's a couple of remedies that come up really strong that are part of the kit. Lycopodium's one of them. Gelsemium, one of the remedies we'll teach today, is a pretty big ailments from anticipation remedy. So, you can kind of think about those remedies as potentials. Ultimately, you would want to get a repertory and look in that rubric of ailments from anticipation or stage fright or one of those, and kind of look at the remedies that are there, and then you take those remedies and see which ones are, fit this person's disposition. And you do that by going to the Materia Medica and saying, oh, I'm going to read about Lycopodium. Does this person have some digestive issues? Do they crave sweets? Are they chilly? Do they like company? And you start to learn about what that remedy looks like, and does that fit your grandson's picture? And then that remedy is more likely to act if you were to take it before the test. So you kind of have to, because ailments from anticipation, there's going to be 50 plus remedies there.
Right.
So maybe you pick the ones that are bolded or in caps, right? Those are the ones much stronger to have that symptom in the repertory. But from the remedies we've taught, I think those are the two that initially come to mind. Okay. Anything else? All right. So just a brief mention of the table of contents. Page numbers on all of these, right? So this is your way to kind of say, okay, once I have a condition that I'm treating for someone in the family, etc., where do I go find that remedy in my book? Because we've organized it with page numbers. So say you're treating nausea and you want to read about the main remedies for nausea. Well, then you're going to go read about arsenicum, nux vomica, phosphorus, sepia, veratrum, but they're going to kind of be in different sections because we've taught some of these other remedies at different places. So you're going to have to jump around a little bit, but this makes it easy and accessible to get there. So is everyone comfortable about how to use the table of contents? Cool. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so now we're going to flip to page 52. And we're going to do a headache overview. So,
57.